I didn't say anything for years. I believed it was my job to him, my family, and my faith. She starts, but silence can only hold so much weight before it breaks under the truth. Her voice is steady but full of emotion. The story of a man that everyone admires is in these pages. I used to admire this man too. However, what do you do when the person you thought you knew is actually someone else? I ignored the whispers, the signs, and the reasons for my behaviors for too long, but I can't take this load any longer. The truth needs to be told. What did Pastor John Gray hide from you? And why did his wife pick this time to tell everyone about them? Watch this space to find out the story that has been hidden for decades. Pastor John Gray became well known as one of the most exciting and engaging speakers of his time. He became well known in the Christian world very quickly for his powerful sermons and motivational talks. A lot of people loved him because he could connect with them on a human level by mixing humor, faith, and being able to relate to others. As the head of a growing congregation, his influence went far beyond the pulpit. Through books, TV sermons, and social media, he reached millions of people. The outside world thought that John Gray was the perfect spiritual leader and family guy. In his sermons, he often used his wife and children as examples of God's gifts to talk about how important love, faith, and commitment are. Many people in the Christian community looked up to him because he was known for being a devoted husband and father. Being a part of the prosperity gospel movement helped him reach more people with his words of hope, plenty, and God's favor. His wife played just as important a part behind the scene. People didn't always notice what she did, but as his faithful and steadfast partner, she was there for him through every victory and hardship. From the beginning of their mission to the height of his fame, she did everything she could to support his path. She made a lot of sacrifices, whether it was taking care of their house, watching over church events, or keeping up their carefully curated public image. But the stress of being famous started to get to them. She felt like she had to put on a beautiful show for everyone as her husband's fame grew. Even though she smiled for the cameras and met people with grace, she was having more and more problems in her personal life. It got harder and harder for her to balance the standards of the congregation with the realities of her own life. She started to see cracks in their life which seemed to be built on solid ground. She started to doubt the man she had made her life with because of small inconsistencies, unexplained absences, and times of emotional distance. The weight of these doubts grew over time, made worse by the demands that were put on her as the pastor's wife. Her job required her to always be there for others and keep quiet, even when she felt like she had a lot of questions that she couldn't answer. Over the years, her inner struggle got worse. What did she do to make sense of the public picture of her husband as a spiritual leader and the private truths she was starting to learn? Her love for him and her trust in God were put to the ultimate test, and she had to face the difference between the life she lived and the life she showed the world. Slowly, signs of trouble started to show up, like small cracks in a building that seemed unbreakable. People in the congregation noticed that she wasn't at a few important events where she usually stood proudly by his side. Her smile seemed forced, and she was less outgoing than normal when she did show up. Small changes in her behavior and vague comments she made in everyday talks led to a lot of quiet speculation in the congregation. There were rumors that the couple was having problems, but no one was brave enough to say them out loud. Behind closed doors, things were much worse than anyone could have thought. She found something that would make everything different. A folder hidden in a desk box that had financial records that didn't match up with the church's official books. The documents gave hints of expensive purchases and shady dealings, which made people very worried about the honesty of their shared government. When she saw a bunch of private texts on his phone, she became even more suspicious. Not only were these conversations innocent, but they also had feelings of betrayal that hurt her deeply. She had full faith in the man who was the father of her children and her spiritual partner, but he was hiding a side of himself that she never thought possible. During an angry fight, things finally broke down. When she told him what she had found, he tried to brush off her worries, but his vague answers made her feel even more betrayed. The argument got worse, and there were moral problems. She had to think about her role in more ways than just being his wife for the first time. As a partner in a mission that now seemed dirty, the thought came to her like a wave. The man she had been with and the life she had built were not what they seemed to be. It was at this important moment that she started her quest to find the truth and get her voice back. She and the community, who had put their complete faith in their spiritual leaders, were both shocked and shocked by what they heard. It started when she chose to face the truth straight on. She was no longer ready to keep quiet about the worrisome facts she had learned. Bad handling of money, She told everyone that church funds given by faithful members had been used for personal pleasures. The money that was supposed to be used for ministry work paid for expensive trips to faraway places, high-end designer goods, and business projects that were never made public. There was no denying the proof. There were bank records, bills, and receipts that showed spending that was very different from what the church was trying to do. These revelations made people wonder who was responsible and how open things were. This made the congregation lose faith in their leaders. Betrayal of a person. She didn't just tell about wrongdoing with money. She talked about how private betrayals had hurt her emotionally and went against the image of a dedicated husband and spiritual guide. There were claims of cheating, backed up by private texts and odd behavior she had seen over the years. Besides being physically abused, she talked about years of mental abuse, small but hurtful actions that made her feel less valuable. She had been going through these problems in quiet for years, putting the idea of a happy relationship ahead of her own health. Spiritual conflict, this spiritual conflict that had been building for years, may have been the most important thing she learned. She said they had strong disagreements about the direction of their church, especially about how much it focused on wealth and prosperity. He taught messages of plenty and divine favor, but she was getting more and more uncomfortable with how their teachings didn't match up with what they did in real life. The focus on money seemed to take away from the values of faith, service, and humility that drew her to ministry in the first place. She didn't speak it out of anger. She did it because she wanted the truth and wanted to be held responsible. She thought that the community should know what was really going on, even if it meant showing how weak she was. The revelations made them think not just about their work, but about how to deal with the difficulties of faith, leadership, and personal honesty. The revelations sent shockwaves through the church, making the people respond right away and strongly. Pastor John Gray had been a towering figure of faith and direction for years. When his alleged wrongdoings were suddenly made public, his followers were left feeling a mix of shock, anger, and heartbreak. There were shocks in the church. The crowd split into two groups very quickly. On one side were the strong defenders who were loyal followers who didn't accept the accusations. For them, this was a test of their faith and the strength of their boss. On the other side were people who wanted to hold people accountable. People in this group, many of whom had given money and time to the church, felt betrayed. They didn't understand how someone who had been given their faith and money could supposedly abuse them. During church meetings, heated arguments broke out, with people publicly disagreeing with each other's points of view. People in the congregation were no longer united as they had been before the incident. Media chaos. It wasn't just inside the church where the trouble started. The story was picked up by news sites, and within hours it was the top story across the country. There were a lot of hashtags, views, and debates on social media sites. Videos of Pastor Gray's sermons were broken down, with critics pointing out what they saw as his hypocrisy and fans pointing out how he helped people. A lot of important Christians weighed in, which made things worse. Some leaders asked people to be kind and understanding, and they told people to remember that everyone, even preachers, is human and can make mistakes. Some people were more harsh, stressing the need for honesty and openness in service. People began to talk about how religious leaders should be held accountable and what role money plays in modern churches because of the scandal. The picture of Pastor John Gray, which was once looked up to, was now being looked at very closely. The public's response was both a bittersweet triumph and a sign that her choice to speak out was the right one. The answer from Pastor John Gray: when the accusations came out, everyone was waiting with bated breath to hear what Pastor John Gray had to say. Because he was so well-spoken and able to connect with his audience, his response to the scandal was sure to change how it was told. One Sunday morning, Pastor Gray spoke out in public from the pulpit. There were many people in the chapel who were eager to hear his side of the story. His voice, which was generally strong and authoritative, had a tone of weakness to it. I'm here in front of you today, nicked as a perfect man, but as someone who has made a mistake. He looked around the room and then spoke. In his statement, he rejected some of the most serious charges, especially those that he had mismanaged money. Some churchgoers praised his humility and desire to work toward reconciliation, but others were still skeptical and thought he was just trying to fix things instead of truly repenting. Even though Pastor Gray's answer was sincere, it made people wonder about his leadership and honesty. For his wife, it was the start of a new era in which the preaching could no longer drown out her voice and the truth. Changes in their relationship. The revelations shook Pastor John Gray and his wife's marriage to the core, revealing problems and pain that had been hidden for years. What their community had once praised as a partnership was now facing its toughest test. There was stress in the marriage and a lot of mental upheaval right after the accusation. Friends and family said that John and his wife were having tense talks behind closed doors. They both felt betrayed, angry, and sad. She allegedly told him about the years of silence she had to deal with and asked why their private problems were allowed to get worse without being addressed. Their kids, who were in the middle, saw how hard it was. Family meals became quiet, and there were a lot of unspoken words in the air. During a very emotional time, she told them, "This isn't just about us. It's about what we want our children and this church to remember us by." The pressure was increased by the public's attention. Both fans and haters wrote a lot on their social media accounts. Some told her to leave, while others asked for forgiveness. At the same time, the community was split, with whispers of anger and loyalty coming from the pews. Making choices about the future. As the couple thought about their choices, their future was in danger. At one point, it looked like they were going to split up. His wife was said to have told close friends that she was thinking about leaving both the marriage and the church. "I need to get back to being myself," she said. Their shared religion, on the other hand, helped them make decisions. So they could focus on the relationship, they decided to step away from public life for a while. They said in a joint statement, "We are committed to seeking healing for ourselves, our family, and our church. This is not a quick fix, it's a process." As a way to make peace, they changed what their jobs were in the ministry. She became a more visible leader and worked on reaching out to the community and being open, while John focused on spiritual renewal. They promised to rebuild trust in their marriage and with their community as a whole. It was still unclear whether or not their efforts would succeed in the end, but for now, they decided to face the future together. Trip may be. She said that being strong doesn't mean never falling. It's about getting higher every time.